welcome to the Death of a Dream podcast. Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, Hanna Nuss, and we're talking about just all the things. All the things, your dreams, all the things, your emotion, and movement, and love, and passion, and just everything in your life that you could ever want. That's what I want to talk about. So let's go ahead and ground ourselves in our greatness. This is a daily practice of self-love, of self-belief, and of self-change, right? Because we're not going to get anywhere doing the same shit we've been doing, okay? So, my great thing from yesterday... Yesterday was a low day for me, trying to really key in and pay attention to triggers and things that send me into this place of disbelief, of hardness. But even in that low day, I still found a way to be productive, and I pitched to my first literary agent, and now looking back, I'm... certain, like, I did more research after I sent the pitch, but I'm just like, oh, but, I just don't think that things happen by accident. I think you have to just keep putting yourself out there. You have to keep learning and knowing and growing and moving in this space. And because I did that, because I submitted my first pitch, I went ahead and did more research on what pitching looks like, on what pitching could look like, on what it should be. And I learned more in doing than I ever have in sitting here motionless. And the discomfort of doing that, the real discomfort of refreshing my email, knowing that there's something sitting out there that's completely out of my control, that is completely subjective and just there. And that also led me to reach out to one of my friends who is also writing her own book. And so today, we're going to connect and touch base on like steps that I took, because you all know me, right? Like, I take steps 10 years before I'm ready, just because I work best falling forward. I don't tend to make the same mistake twice, and I rely heavily on my own intuition to guide me to the right place. And most of the most effective steps for me look like losing. But that always sets me down a path of getting it right. I don't know many people who would know how to publish a book, how to find a publisher, how to write a query. That's what it's called when you're pitching. I don't exactly have a network of people around me that can give me good, solid advice or contacts. And so most of the things that I do in this space look like epic failures to start. Hey, that's how we started this podcast. And we're somewhere different than we've been. I'm just committing to getting it wrong in an attempt to get it more right than I did the time before. And just trusting, right? Just trusting that process of guidance and continuing to put myself out there, even though it's wildly uncomfortable, even though the bigger fear riding up inside of me is that people will reject it. And then I'll know that you can't just do this. And that's the bigger fear, right? Like, what if at the end of all of this, What if this podcast I set out to prove that you could just write dreams down and you could just follow that path and you would end up successful? What if I don't? Then what? What if I prove myself right? What if I prove myself wrong? What if this whole thing, this whole movement, this whole drive has been for naught? And yet, this is what I do know. It's not for naught. Every second of every day, I feel more wildly aligned than I ever did and ever would have, continuing to do what I was doing. And so there are just going to be highs and lows on the journey. I've been in a low. I'm still constantly working through lows that kind of are ever revolving, but here's the deal. I'm showing up as a completely different person than I was even 6 months ago, than I was even 2 weeks ago. And so part of that process is learning new norms, is learning new ways to show up in this world, is figuring out how I have to adjust old things that served me and find new things that serve me and the person that I am today. And like I said, that's ever changing. I'm learning new things by the minute about myself, which is amazing and inspiring, but that also means that I have to craft, cater, and build a new life that maybe doesn't look like the one that I had before, which means change, constant push and rebuilding and re-understanding and paying attention, right? And so my great thing from yesterday was we pitched people, you and me. We pitched the book that I've been working on, the book that is still about 3 chapters away from being finished, and 3 chapters away from being finished. Like there's the book, but then having to go back in and rewrite. And for me, like I always just have to get the initial idea out there, then go back to it and really delve in more, explaining of the things. But you know, like we're at a place where we can pitch. There's enough on paper to start pitching, and that's huge. So that's my great thing. Go ahead and take time for yourself to talk about the great things that you're doing. Seriously. Like, not only will it build your skill set in your ability to do that, which is important, you know, if you're ever going to get a higher up job, if you're ever going to get a job, if you're ever going to, I don't know, just like want to do something, it's probably going to be important that you're confident in what you bring to the table. That's what this practice is going to do. It's going to flex that muscle. That's important. Secondly, it's going to start to shift this belief that you are not great, right? We want everyone that listens to this podcast to practice greatness in their daily lives. Because when we're just waiting for great, we tend to ignore that it's happening every day. And it is. Trust. So go ahead and recognize yourself for your great thing, for the greatness in your life. Okay. So, big things, right? We pitched. We did a thing. It's a thing. It's out there. And yesterday I was just toying with this. Like, you're not ready. You're never going to be ready. Come on, just give in. You're not supposed to be this person. If you were, you would have been her by now. You're not good enough to write a book. Look at this book. I actually loaded my book into one of my editors. I use Grammarly to watch for key mistakes, which it's not perfect either. Neither am I. I feel like Grammarly is probably more exhausted with me than it even should be, because it's just like, This girl shouldn't be trusted to write words in sentences, and trust. I know. My mind moves. This is what I've figured out. My mind moves and writes in words before I can even type it. And so it gets hard for me to capture in real time um, while my mind races towards the next thing. Um, which is why a lot of my work tends to read a little unedited or a little bit sketchy, but this is what you should know. I speak. I do that every day. That comes so much more naturally to me. And even when I speak things, it's different than writing. And writing really has more of a limit for me. There's a lot more limiting beliefs that go behind that work than there has ever been with speaking. And so I think that's why I'm perplexed by it. I think it's why it's something that I have to continue pushing myself to do. And yesterday, I was just calling out all of the demons that exist around this. Like, come on, Hannah. You just push. Just push submit. Just do it. You're never going to know. And a part of me just deeply doesn't want to know. A huge part of me wants to just exist here in podcast land where we're comfortable and growing and safe and loving. And yet I know bottom line, first off, this is something that I've always wanted to do. Second off, this is essentially how we continue spreading this word and we grow the existence of our community. We find more people that rise up from this place of fine. We continue to move and push past limits that we all set for ourselves based on, I don't know, where we come from, what we've been told. I don't know what's holding you back, but this is how we find more people that look like us, who just started showing up for life according to everyone else, who didn't even know that they were doing that, right? That was it for me. Like, no, I decided this. And then when I really started to dig into it, I hadn't decided a thing, right? And so now we have to start walking this truth. We have to start walking this new path together, right? And that makes it so much less scary. I think for me, knowing that I have people who I can call on, who can help me champion this moment, who can help me figure out how to do it better than the first time that I did it. But for me, it was all just about like, apply the Band-Aid and then just rip it off, right? Like, Hannah, even if they say no, right? At least then you know. At least then you know that you have to shift. At least then you know that you have to work harder. You have to push yourself harder. You have to find new people. You have a line in the sand that's never hurt you before, right? Because then it at least gives you something to put out there, gives you something to put energy behind. Maybe disappointment is better than never knowing at all. Hannah. Right? And so yesterday was the first step of many into this new world. Because we've been existing here and that had to happen. It's built my confidence, it's built my knowledge, it's built my skill set, it's built my audience, it's built in beautiful people that I connect with every single day, that I'm learning more about myself, that I'm learning more about this place of discomfort, this place of choosing complacency or choosing to change, right? And that's something that I want to never stop learning about. Like, what is it? How are you sitting perfectly in your life and yet perfectly dissatisfied with it. And that's exactly where I was at. I actually wrote a blog post about that moment today. Not a blog post. I wrote it Instagram because I don't know. I don't know that I ever would have relieved myself from that place. I don't know that I ever would have pushed myself beyond that had I not had a friend who kind of served up perfectly in the way of the world, perfectly into this place. And she just started calling for more from me, right? And had I been sitting there alone, as I would have been, had I been trying to venture down this path without her, I don't know that I would be in this place today, right? Because she was similar to me. And this was the first person that I would come into contact with who said, like, no, I think it's okay to want more, right? And she also believed in more in me. And that was the first time that those two things had gone hand in hand, right? And I've had beautiful friends who push me, who have guided me. She just happened to be the one that was physically there and took me to other places that I would have never gone. And part of that moment just showed me that there are people that exist like this, that know deep down, that have this deeper call, this deeper push, this deeper want out of life, and that have no reason to, right? And she was a perfect reflection of that to me, of I see her. The way that I see her is she has everything together. She has the perfect career. She's the perfect mom. She's this perfect person, right? How many of those people do we know? Millions. And then when I actually got to know her, what I realized is, yeah, it's perfect. It's perfect according to everyone. But that doesn't mean that it was perfect according to her. That didn't mean that there wasn't still something calling to her, right? And for me, that's what it looked like. It was just like, yeah, I know, but there's still something. And then that something became like, oh, I'm just supposed to chase money, or I'm just supposed to keep climbing, or I'm just supposed to do this or that. And I knew more than anyone that this wasn't probably ever going to be enough. And I think the coaching portion of this experience for me really showed me that I was capable, that my thoughts and my ideas and my ways of looking at the world and approaching success were spot on. And most of that just came from a place of love. A place of, let's not beat it out of people. Let's love people there. Let's move people there. Let's see how they're feeling. Let's guide our behavior based on what I feel. And let's move that way. And so having that success, understanding that, allowed my friend to see that too and to start calling for more when I didn't even know that I wanted more at the time. And so we would start moving. I would start moving in this direction. She would start moving in her own direction, right? And part of those movements have been movement together, have been movement apart, but have always been steps forward. And for me now, we're at like this turning point of, okay, do you actually want more? You've done so much more than I ever could have dreamt. And now it's like, let's move. Let's take that next step. Let's just see. Let's just see. Because to me, the stake looks like this. So everyone says no. And everyone says the things that I'm probably thinking in my head still. Like, you can't write. This isn't possible for you. Keep moving, sister. I don't believe that that's going to happen. Right? And even if it does, I would still rather be disappointed in a no than sit and wonder. Right? Wonder if anyone would have ever read my book. Wonder if everyone would have ever found value in the idea of what I wanted to write. Sit and wonder if I had just taken that chance, if I had just taken that next step, what could have happened. I'm not willing to sit there anymore. And yesterday was the first pitch of many. And it felt great to just rip that Band-Aid off, to just say, like, this is where I want to stand in this world. And even if I get a million no's, I will never stop fighting for all of us, right? For every single one of you who has dreams, who maybe, and maybe this is crazy to say, but maybe you look at me as someone who's 5 steps ahead of you, but right here on this same path. And you probably don't want to publish books or do a podcast or do anything like that. But maybe me continuing to work, continuing to drive, continuing to prove what's possible pushes you to continue in your own work of proving to yourself what's possible. And so maybe I just have to keep going, blind on faith, tea, coffee, and caffeine. For all of us. For every single person that's been told no. For every single person that was told no so early on that they didn't even know what yes was. For every single person who was raised in a world of impossibility. For every single person that was told that they should just settle for fine. That they should just pray more and be grateful. Like, you deserve dreams. You deserve dreams too. You don't have to give up. I don't care where you're at in your life. Right? Because you can sit here and say, oh yeah, well, Hannah, you haven't done this. You're not here. You don't know. You're not this age. You're not in this profession. You don't. Trust me. Trust. I had no reason to show up, to put my hand out, to ask for more, to want something different. Like, I had seen so much success. There was success promised. There were amazing things promised. I knew that I was going to have to wait. But they were coming, right? All I had to do was wait. But I knew deep down in my core that even if I waited, it probably still wasn't going to serve me. I knew exactly what it was that I wanted to do. I knew. And I knew it would just take me a very long time to actually say it. And saying it was the biggest step. Writing it, saying it, showing back up, writing it, saying it, doing the things. That was hard. And now continuing to do that work, continuing to look those dreams straight in the yellow ink that I write them in every morning and say, like, I'm working on you. And I am going to reach one of you. By the end of this year, one of these things will be checked off. And I'm still not sure which one. I'm still trying to think, like, which one is the most realistic and easy to accomplish. Which one could be checked off this list fastest? But one of those goals is going to be checked off, to open room for a new dream. And I have to just continue to be fueled by the fact that I'm 2 steps ahead of anyone listening here, or I'm walking stride in stride with you, and we're holding hands and we're rising up together, and I know that you know that your time is coming, and I know that you know the same things that I do, that you've been on this self-growth path, that you are learning new things about yourself every day, and you are adapting to that, and you are growing with this new person, and you are figuring out more about who she needs to be and how she needs to show up in this world. And if we are walking stride in stride, if we are moving together, what a beautiful place to be, right? And sure, I'm certain that our dreams look very different, but I am certain that our hearts don't. I know that they look like fire. I know that they look like passion just burning deep in the chambers of the heart. Wow, I got that right. That's like a doctor thing, okay? Whatever teacher told me I wasn't smart enough to be a doctor. Did you hear that? The chambers. There are 4 chambers in the heart, right? And I know that our hearts look the same. That I do know. And so let's just keep moving. Let's actually strive for disappointment, because then at least we know, right? At least we know how to keep growing. At least we know how to keep moving. At least we know what we need to not be in that moment, right? But if we don't ever even find disappointment, we just never know. And I don't want that for you. I don't want the could have, should have, living in this like Uncle Rico moment that, a lot of us live in. It's easier. It definitely is easier to live there. But I guess we just have to keep pushing to find where we're meant to be, to keep finding disappointment, because on the other side of that comes knowing, right? And you don't bet on disappointment, right? My biggest mental shift right now is making myself believe that I am going to find the right publisher, that I am going to find the right agent, and that they're going to love everything that I bring. And hopefully they bring a good set of editors to help me, right? But like, the perfect person who is supposed to help me on my path will be served to me. And so disappointment doesn't even look like getting a no, right? A no means that just wasn't what was meant for me. That means there's someone else out there meant to bring this work into the world. And we just want to be a group that knows. I would rather know a no than never know at all. As always, you're smart, you're strong, you're beautiful. What are you going to do? Change the world.